Good morning, everyone. We are starting a new journey today. We've been doing the study of the Andre Luiz collection since the beginning, since No Solar. So it's probably like 20 years that we've been doing this study. And today we start the book Between Heaven and Earth. We just finished last month the book Liberation. The difference between the two books, the basic difference, is that Liberation takes place mostly in the rescue of a leader of the lower zones. So a lot of it passes in the lower zones, and the rescue of some incarnated that are being obsessed and influenced by spirit. This book, it's more of everyday life in a family with their struggles and the process of reincarnation, of trials and atonements, and everything related to a family living all incarnated, and we will see how it develops. It's a very interesting book, a lot of very interesting subjects that we are going to learn in this book. The law of cause and effect, the law of reincarnation, and especially in this very beginning, the prayer and the importance of prayer. Okay, so we're going to start by the introduction. It's not a very long introduction, but as usual, brought by Emmanuel. Okay. Zoraida, you're going to read for us?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Between Heaven and Earth. This account by Andre Luiz emphasizes both the respect we owe our physical body and our need for unceasing toil on behalf of the good, so that we may reap the best benefits possible from our earthly journey as part of our eternal life. In this book, we are not faced with any sort of spectacular situation. There are no heroes possessing unattainable virtues, no unapproachable angels. In each chapter, we find ourselves facing our old problems of love and hatred, affection and animosity due to our hardened minds in certain phases of our life journey, either in the dusk of our blurry dreams or in the darkness of our passions, which at times pull us down into deep abysses. On nearly every page, we see the daily lives of souls who aspire to victory over themselves and who rely on the treasures of time to acquire enlightenment. The basic pictures of the narratives are intimately familiar to us. The afflicted heart in prayer, the mind paralyzed in illusion and suffering, the home inundated with trials, the pathway beset with struggles, madness of jealousy, delusion of ownership, clashes of thought, conflicts of emotion, and hovering over the contexture of the pure and simple facts is a central theme: the need to use the resources that the world offers us for the reconstructing of our destiny. On many occasions, we are compelled to behold the celestial vastness so that we may gather enough strength to deal victoriously with the future. However, at times we are forced to examine the earthly journey so that we may understand the past in which our present originates. In this book, we are led to look within ourselves at the ground of our experiences and possibilities so that we may not lack the balance we need on the redemptive journey toward our future. An unspoken voice from the divine plane appears, exhorting us without words. The Lord is alive and justice never fails. Let go of evil forever and sow the good each and every day. Help those around you, thereby helping yourself. Time does not stop, and if now you find your yesterday, do not forget that today will be the light or the darkness of your tomorrow. Emmanuel.
Yes, and this book was written in January 1954 in Pedro Leopoldo, where Chico used to live at that time. Okay. So, you know, Emmanuel is giving us here the introduction of what it is, what we are going to encounter in the study of this book. And he says there is nothing, no spectacular situations, no heroes. It's just everyday life people. Old problems of love and hatred, affection and animosity, due to our own problematic minds during our journey. So he says, we are going to see the afflicted heart in prayer, the mind that is paralyzed in illusion and suffering, the trials, our pathway, the struggles of the pathways, jealousy, the delusion of ownership, possessing material things, conflicts of emotions and clashes of thought. And he advises that they need to use the resources that the world offers us for the restructuring of our destiny. So these resources are both in the physical and in the spiritual world, accessible to us. In the physical world, the material things we have around us that can help us progress, and in the spiritual world, by the assistance of the spirits that are always around us, trying to help us if we open ourselves for their help. So, you know, he concludes by saying that time does not stop, and if now you find your yesterday, do not forget that your today will be the light or the darkness of your tomorrow. So we have to reminding us that we have to look at our past to learn the lessons from it, knowing that we cannot change our past, our yesterday, but everything that we are doing today will be what we are going to face the consequences on the tomorrow, meaning the light or the darkness of tomorrow is what we are going to do today. And then, of course, he brings us the basic teaching of Spiritism: help those around you, thereby helping yourself. Without charity, there is no salvation. Every time we are helping those around us, we are mainly helping ourselves in our progress. So a very simple introduction, very but deep, with some good thoughts. Any comments, questions here, Elmo?
Yeah, the most important observation, in my opinion, is that the whole introduction is in the first person of the plural. There is no mention of the characters in this book. There is no mention of they. It's all about us. It's we. So this is a book that we can use as a mirror to reflect ourselves.
Yes. Thanks. Okay. So this book has 40 chapters. They are small chapters, so we may be able to do a couple of chapters each month, more likely. Okay. So it starts with prayer. Again, the basis of this book is a prayer. Okay. Go ahead, Zoraida.
Regarding prayer, we were all gathered in the Temple of Assistance, listening closely to Minister Clarence's as he commented on the sublimity of prayer. Every desire, he stated convincingly, is a fountainhead of power, the plant that grows tall, converting its own energy into life-nourishing fruit, is a being that longs to reproduce. But every petition that has to have someone who can hear it broke in one of the fellow spirits. Who could possibly respond to a plant's worthless request? Our esteemed instructor responded calmly. As a representation of our Heavenly Father, the law manifests to everything and everyone through the many agents that serve it. In this particular case, it is the sun that nourishes the plant, conveying what it needs to reach its objectives. And imprinting his voice with a significant intonation, he continued. On God's behalf, creatures meet the needs of other creatures as much as possible, just as electricity has transformers for the appropriate use of its power. Every rim of the universe has transformers of blessing, help, and enlightenment. The main currents of life originate with the Almighty and flow downward, transubstantiated in infinite ways, from brightest light to complete darkness and vice versa. The Creator's breath flows in and out through countless beings of all tones of instinct, intelligence, reason, humanity, and angelhood. These beings modify the divine energy according to their environment's degree of evolution. Every space of life is filled to the brim with millions of creatures. The pathway of spiritual ascent is that wondrous ladder in Jacob's vision, which went from the earth to be lost in the heavens. In whatever form it may take, prayer is an action that causes a corresponding reaction. Depending on its nature, it either hovers in the area in which it was emitted, or it ascends to a certain height to receive an immediate or delayed response, depending on its intended purpose. Worldly desires are fulfilled close to the spheres where they originate. Impulses of somewhat more noble expression are aided by souls who have become ennobled. But ideas and petitions of profound meaning for eternity mount the heights. Our magnanimous mentor paused briefly as if to give us time to reflect, and then continued. Every prayer, just like any other emission of power, is characterized by a certain power frequency, and we are all surrounded by intelligences that are capable of tuning in to our appeal like receiving stations. We know that in the infinite worlds of the cosmic grandeur, universal humanity is comprised of God's creatures of various ages and various situations. In the spirit realm, we too must be mindful of the principles of hereditary. To the degree that it perfects and sanctifies itself, each conscience acquires more and more of the Heavenly Father's qualities and gradually comes into harmony with the law. The higher the percentage of such qualities in a spirit, the greater its ability to cooperate in carrying out the divine plan by responding to the requests of life on behalf of God, who has created all of us for infinite love and infinite wisdom.
Thanks. So, first, some notes here. Temple of Assistance, it's an institution in Nosso that where Andre Luiz lives, right? We know that. They were listening to Minister Clarencio. Why does this name sound familiar? Clarencio, if you go back to Nosso Lar, when Andre Luiz is in the lower zones, then Andre Luiz looking for help and praying, when he finally sincerely prayed for assistance, Clarencio shows in front of him, and Andre Luiz asks, "Who are you, generous emissary of God?" And the unexpected benefactor smiled kindly and replied, "Call me Clarencio, I'm only your brother." And realizing my exhaustion, he added, "Now remain calm and silent. You need to rest to regain your energy." Clarencio was the spirit that rescued Andre Luiz from the lower zones in the beginning of the book Nosso Lar, in the first or second chapter. So just for a side note for us to place who is Clarencio. And he's talking about the thoughts and prayers and desires, right? And he said that all living beings have the instinct, at least. So even a plant is a being that longs to reproduce. And then someone asked, who could possibly respond to the plant request? And he said, in the case of the plant, the sun that nourishes, conferring what's needed. So again, every living being has a journey, and we know that the spiritual principle goes through, in the evolutionary path, goes through the animal, the mineral phase, and then to the vegetable phase. So a plant already has a spiritual principle associated with it. A plant is not a spiritual principle. A plant has a spiritual principle associated with it. Okay, that's the concept. Learning what the spiritual principle is learning in the plant, in the stage of vegetable phase, is learning the instinctive traits, looking for the sun. It directs itself to the sun. The roots learning to gather nutrients from the soil. This is all the basic instinct that the spiritual principle is learning through the plant. And then he continues that he talks about God's breath, or which is a symbolic description of God's divine law that flows in and out of beings in all tones of instinct, intelligence, reason, humanity, and angelhood. You see the evolution of the spirit, right? That goes as a spiritual principle through instinct. The animal phase, the first very rudimentary notions of intelligence. When he reaches the phase of individual spirit, reason starts to develop, free will starts to develop, cause and consequence starts to play a role. And then when he says humanity is when the moral sense becomes more developed, and the awareness of the need to perform certain roles in terms of the moral aspect of our evolutionary path. And of course, angelhood meaning when we reach the level of a more evolved spirit, closer to a perfect spirit already in the last developments. When that famous lecturer Xavier says, when we change the need to do charity as a moral obligation that we know that we have to where charity is a part of who we are, and we no longer need to make an effort to do charity because it's who we are. We are charitable by the way we act on our everyday life. That is the characteristic of more evolved spirit. And he Clarencio continues saying that we evolve and we modify ourselves, and we use the divine energy according to our degree of evolution. And then he mentions that the pathway of spiritual ascent is that wondrous ladder in Jacob's vision. What is Jacob's vision? So Jacob's ladder is a ladder leading to heaven that was featured in a dream that the biblical patriarch Jacob had during his flight from his brother Esau in the book of Genesis, chapter 28. That's where you find Jacob's ladder that goes from earth to heaven. Okay, and then Clarencio says, in whatever form it may take, prayer is an action that causes a corresponding reaction. Prayer is matter. Every time we emit a prayer, it goes out to somewhere and causes a corresponding reaction. Now, then he talks about the different levels of prayer, right? that depending on the nature of prayer, it either stays around us, if our prayer is focused on our daily issues. We pray to find a job, we pray to find a partner, we pray to find money, to solve our problems. These are prayers that hovers in the area where it was emitted. It can ascend to a certain height to receive an immediate or delayed response, depending on intended purpose. So when we are praying, sincerely praying for our health, for the assistance for our loved ones, it goes above the area in which was emitted and reaches a higher level of spirituality to be answered. And he says here, worldly desires are fulfilled close to the sphere where they originate. That's very important. But more noble expressions, of course, are aided by souls who have become ennobled. But ideas and petitions of profound meaning for eternity mount to the heights. When we are praying, sincerely praying for noble purposes and ideas, and for the evolution of humankind to the higher levels, it is those are the prayers that reach the heights and reach the more elevated spirit. So he continues saying that prayer, like any other emission of power, is characterized by a certain power frequency, and we are surrounded by spirits or intelligence that are capable of tuning to our appeal, like receiving stations. And what spirits are going to be attuned depending on the level of the prayer we are saying and the type of prayer. When you are praying for material things, you attract more material spirits. When you are praying for more spiritual things, you are going to attract more elevated spirits. And he finishes here saying that each conscience acquires more and more of the Heavenly Father's qualities and gradually comes into harmony with the law. As we evolve, our prayers should become more enlightened and more illuminated. And the higher the more qualities we have in a spirit, the greater ability to carry out the divine plan, meaning we become co-creators of the universe on behalf of God, who created all of us for infinite love and infinite wisdom, which is the pinnacle of moral evolution and intellectual evolution. Infinite love and infinite wisdom. Love here in the most pure sense, the love for all humanity, the agape in Greek, which is the most elevated form of love. Okay? Comments, questions here? Elmo?
No, I don't think I have any comments. I think just to clarify that we have the necessity of praying, having received the divine laws imprinted in our conscience. Now we have, so to say, as in the Mosaic Genesis, to build our life by the sweat of our brow. And before we receive that, before we become individualized intelligent principle, everything was granted to us because we didn't have any understand of the rules of the game, so to say. So a plant does not need to pray for the sun. The sun shines for all the plants, and the plant will be guided instinctively to move around to where the sun shines brighter. But once we become intelligent, individual way to the divine laws printed in our conscience, when Jesus meets someone, he would ask, what do you want? That is a clear statement that we have to show our desire, our sincere desire to gain something, to work for something. Below that, for the animals, for the plants, they don't have to do that. Everything is granted to them to reach the level when they now have to utilize the intelligence, the free will in accordance to the divine laws imprinted in our conscience.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions, comments? Okay.
Breaking the silence, during which we pondered what was being said, Brother Hilario asked, but how are we to interpret this information when we are confronted with evil purposes? Could a person bent on committing a crime also be using a type of prayer? Let's refrain from using the word prayer when dealing with imbalance, stated Clarenzo kindly. Let's use evocation instead. Whenever anyone nourishes the desire to commit a wrong, he or she is evoking powers of a low order and is mobilizing resources for which he or she will be held accountable. By means of the unfortunate impulses of our soul, we often lower ourselves to the frenetic vibrations of anger or immortality. In such a state, it is easy to fall into the foul well of crime, in whose den we are instantly connected to certain minds stagnated in ignorance, which become instruments for our low idealizations or for which we become deplorable playthings in the darkness. All our aspirations set energies in motion, either for good or evil, and for that very reason, we are responsible for their direction. We must carefully analyze the choice we make in dealing with any problem or situation on the pathway set out before us, because our thought will sail before us to attract and shape our intended purpose. In every area of existence, life gives us what we really ask for, and we become its debtors according to what we have received. The minister smiled benevolently and remarked, we can be certain, however, that evil is always a circle close in on ourselves itself, temporarily holding those we have created, who created it. It's like a cyst whose short or long duration, which finally dissolves into the infinite good as minds in tune with it start reforming themselves. The Lord puts up with disharmony so that through it, the moral readjustment of the spirits who sustain it may take place, since evil reacts on those who practice it, helping them to grasp the excellence and immortality of the good, which is the unshakable foundation of the law. We are all masters of our own creations, but at the same time, they're unfortunate slaves or happy wards. Let us ask and receive, but let us bear in mind that we must pay for everything we get. Responsible is the divine principle that no one can escape. Just then, a young, composed-looking woman entered and addressed our instructor in a somewhat troubled manner. Brother Clarenzo, one of our pupils from the staff involved with reincarnations under your directions, is insisting on your help. Is it an urgent personal request? Asked the minister concerned. It is a disturbing matter, the subject of a diverted prayer. The esteemed instructor invited us to come with him, and we followed attentively.
Okay. This brings a very interesting, this part brings a very interesting subject, which is when the Hilario, and we are going to remember next chapter who Hilario is. Hilario asked, what about a person that intends to commit a crime and pray for assistance for that crime? And Clarencio says, so let's refrain from using the word prayer when dealing with this inferior request. Let's use invocation instead, because it's important for us to remember that prayer should be for always for positive things. We should use the word prayer for positive intentions. Again, if I'm praying to find a partner, which is a material, very material prayer, or to find money to pay my my debts, I'm not trying to cause harm to anyone. I'm just trying to solve material problems. So even if they stay very close to me and around me, it's a very physical prayer. It is a prayer that is in a certain way is a positive prayer. When you are asking for help to cause harm to others, when you are praying, which is we shouldn't call prayer. So when you are invoking spirits to assist you to cause harm to your neighbor, we shouldn't call it prayer. Again, words. We're talking about words here, but what then Clarencio talks to us is whenever we are planning to do something wrong, we are invoking powers of a low order and mobilizing resources that will be accountable for. So if I want to cause harm to my neighbor because he's been disturbing me here for some reason, the moment I decide to do something negative towards him, I will attract spirits that are inferior spirits that are either connected to him, my neighbor, or her, that we all have our persecutors around us trying to take any advantage that we open ourselves to for them, and also the inferior spirits that are connected to me that want to cause trouble for me because they don't want me to continue evolving, because they want revenge, they want many different things. So whenever we are planning something to cause harm to others, immediately we associate with spirits that want to partake our intent. And it is easy to attract these spirits, and sometimes very hard to disconnect from these spirits, because once they find the vibrational level that we are and connect with us, we need to change this vibration. We need to change our thought process, and it is possible, it is doable, but it's not easy. So we have to be very careful with our thoughts not to attract this spirit. And again, we all have negative thoughts throughout the day. It's part of our state as imperfect spirits, that we are going to have positive and negative thoughts during the day. And that's not really what causes the problem. The problem happens when we focus on a negative thought and we focus on a negative action, and we start working on it mentally, or start acting. That's when we attract the inferior spirit. So, when you have that quick thought, oh, this is a bad day, I'm having a terrible day, which is a negative thought. Everything is wrong is happening to me today. And then immediately after said, oh, but let me not fall into these negative vibrations. Let me pray and hope that things will get better. you are not doing any negative connections, because this was a quick negative thought that came to you that we have every day, but we didn't act on it, we didn't insist on it, and we didn't stay on it. Okay, it's a very important concept, because sometimes we may think that oh, I cannot have negative thoughts, I'm doomed by my negative thoughts. No, as long as we don't carry them, we don't focus on them, and we try to move on from them, not insist on them, we should be okay. We are not going to have any problem. Clarencio says here, our aspirations set energies in motion, either for good or evil, and for that very reason, we are responsible for their direction. Wherever we set our energies in motion, we are responsible for the consequences. Every action has a reaction, every cause has a consequence. So that's who we are and how we our thoughts and actions have a consequence. So we must carefully analyze the choices we make, dealing with any problem or situation, because we are going to attract or shape our intended purpose. We become debtors according to what we have received. But he also tells us that evil is always a circle closed in itself, and it's temporary, so holding those that created it. And he compares to a cyst of short or long duration that will eventually dissolve in the infinite good as minds in tune with it start reforming themselves. What does he mean? There is no eternal darkness, and actually darkness does not even exist. Darkness is only the absence of light. No darkness continues to exist once you light a very dim light. It will be no longer darkness. So evil in itself, it does not exist or persist. Again, we're talking about our existence as eternal spirit. So it may last a very long time, but we will dissolve itself in the infinite good, because the law is of progress and the eternal law is perfect. So evil, which is the absence of goodness, will disappear when goodness replaces it. And again, very small amount of goodness. Remember, in the book Liberation, Gregorio, after centuries of leading the lower zones, finally, as we study in the last chapter, his mother tells him that what opened the opportunity for him to receive the assistance was the boredom that he reached at a certain point, the lack of objectives, looking ahead, that he started questioning what he was doing because he was bored, and that opened the opportunity to put a little light in the darkness that started his redemption. So we are masters of our own creation, but at the same time, slaves or happy wards, unfortunate slaves or happy wards. So everything that we create, we carry with us, facing the consequences of it, positive or negative. Again, consequences are not always negative. They can be very positive if we are doing the right choices and following the right path. And then this young lady comes and asks for help for one of the staff involved with reincarnations. The brother Clarencio worked with it, and she says that it's a disturbing matter, the subject of a diverted prayer. Diverted, actually the original in Portuguese is refracted. That would be the literal translation of the word in Portuguese. but actually diverted, it makes more sense in English by what we are going to study in the next chapter. So just a side note here, refracted is more of the light that refracts when it reaches a barrier, and diverted, it's a more ample term that it's better used for the subject that we are going to discuss here. And so Clarencio invited Andre and Hilario to come with him and follow, and they followed him. Okay, so that's the end of the first chapter. Any comments, questions here about prayer or invocation or the vibrational levels?
Yes, John, or Elmo. I have a question. If you have a sincere prayer, you're putting it out there in the universe. However, what if you have unconscious beliefs or prior conditioning that opposes your prayer? Will that limit the prayer being received, or will it limit the time frame in which it might be manifest? So in other words, we really want the prayer to happen, but somehow inwardly, we're really blocking it.
Yeah, the intention is everything, the effort. So even if you are praying for something that you sincerely want something, but your inner prejudices still exist, or your doubts, or your hesitations towards what you are asking, are they going to affect the prayer? Yes, they are going to limit the efficacy of the answer to the prayer, because you are limiting yourself, not because the prayer cannot be answered. Prayers are always answered and are always useful, but the result may not be immediate. Okay, so you ask for something that you are in no condition of receiving at the moment, but you can be benefit in different ways by that prayer, not exactly how you ask for it, but how you need it. So we pray for what we want, we receive what we need, and sometimes we think that our prayers have not been answered because we don't see the results of what we want. But actually, we are receiving what we need if the prayer is sincere. Elmo, you want to add something here?
I think there's two issues for the spiritual world to resolve now, right? That is the prayer in itself. And since you use the word prayer and not invocation, you have to assume that in your prayer, in your petition, you ask for something that is of good. There is something that brings good, to the general population, right? And that's one issue. The other issue is overcome our own limitations in order to be able to truly want the things that we are asking for, right? So as a silly example, I pray and I hope that the game that I'm gonna watch later today in hockey, the best team win, just as long as my team wins, right? I'm not able to overcome by likelihood to that team and assume that for fairness, let the best team win. Let the best team just as long as my team wins, right? So I may pray for peace in the world just as long as that country that I don't like become enslaved by another country, because I have that dislike towards that country or something. So there's two issues to be resolved here. And once that prayer is sincere, I have the assumption, and again, it's just an assumption, that the good spirituality will work on both. Okay? they're not going to be concerned with which team's going to win because it's meaningless. But they will be concerned, and this guy is really trying to move forward in his path. I'm gonna help him to be more open to allow the best team win and be content with that, even if it's not his team. Is that what you are asking?
Yes, I think that is very, very helpful. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, Joel. Thank you.
Elmo, any additional comments on the chapter here on this part?
No, I think your explanation is very clear.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so let's go to chapter 2. I wasn't sure we would have time, but we do.
Okay. On the earthly stage, in a spacious room where several spirits were hard at work, a young woman handed Clarenzo a small chart. He began examining it carefully and then remarked, "We've just been talking about responsibility. Here is something to illustrate that idea." He showed us the chart and explained, "This is a soul stirring prayer that managed to go beyond the original vibrational levels of dense matter. It is from a devoted worker who left our spirit city exactly 15 years ago to fulfill certain reincarnation tasks. She didn't leave without our assistance, though, because she is still under our guidance. From the physical point of view, birth and rebirth in the world are subject to biological laws whose execution belongs to specialized minds. But from the moral point of view, they are subordinate to certain influence from the spirit." The minister examined the small, complex chart for a few minutes, but as if he wanted to encourage the continuity of the lesson, my co-worker added, "But of course, reincarnation entails a work plan that is supposed to be carried out." "Yes, of course," agreed the instructor. "And the broader the resources of the spirit returning to the flesh, the more complex its so-called work map is. Almost all of us have a significant amount of past debt to pay, and all of us are challenged by acquisitions we need to attain. This work map entails a type of relative fatalism regarding what we are to experience. On the other hand, we are always responsible for our conduct, a fact that can generate either good or bad circumstances for us. Thus, we can see that free will, which is also relative, is a refutable reality on every evolutionary level of consciousness. We mustn't forget, however, that we evolve independently in each realm. In the physical experience, children need their parents up to a certain point. The sick needs physicians, and the young people need advice from the elders. Here, in the spirit realm, competency depends on instructors. Effective support requires someone who can actually provide it, and a switch from just staying at home to getting involved in ennobling work, when doing so involves a spirit that lacks inaugural merit, requires the endorsement of the appropriate authorities. What is a diverted prayer? Asked my coworker, dying with curiosity. Hilario had also been a doctor in the physical realm, and like me, he remained involved with medical tasks under Clarenzo's responsibility, thus acquiring specialized knowledge. A diverted prayer is one where the direction of the luminous impulse has been diverted, thus reaching another target.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Clarencio here is going to explain what is the diverted prayer and what's happening here, right? So he starts saying that it's a prayer that manages to go beyond the ordinary vibratory levels of dense matter. So it's a really elevated prayer. And it comes from a worker that left the spirit, this no solar, 15 years ago. So it's a young person, right? Because if it left 15 years ago, this person is 14 years. And it's a she, as he says here. She's 14 years old because 15 years with a pregnancy and everything. And then he says that the birth, from the physical point of view, the birth and rebirth are subject to the biological laws, and whose execution belongs to specialized mind, in the original in Portuguese, specialized intelligence. But from the moral point of view, they are subordinate to certain influences from the spirit. So the reincarnation, it's divided in two parts. The biological part, who has spirits responsible for it. We just have to go back to Missionaries of the Light and the chapter on reincarnation, chapter 13, that talks about the biological laws, that you are going to choose your physical necessities, your physical needs according to your the plan for your reincarnation. But also you have the moral point of view, which is the spiritual challenges that you are going to face, the challenges that you are going to face, not with your physical body, but the moral challenges you are going to face with the family you are going to be born, or the difficulties you are going to face related to those around you. So these are subordinate to influences from the spirit. Okay. And the important thing here, he says that almost all of us that come to a reincarnation have past debt to pay, and all of us are challenged by acquisitions we need to attain. Okay, why he says almost all of us and all of us? This is trials and atonements. All of us have trials in our incarnation, with it, which is acquisitions we need to attain to evolve. Almost all of us have debt from the past. This is the expiation or atonement. Some spirits that come here, very few, rare, that come here on a mission, they don't have debt to pay from the past because they have already overcome it. They're not perfect spirits yet, but they come here to help humanity grow and evolve. So they come here with trials, but not with atonements. But this is the rare exception, right? Maybe a Mother Teresa type of spirit. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not guaranteeing. We don't know the individual details, but the missionaries like Mother Teresa may come only with trials, but not with atonement. And it's important here when he talks about relative fatalism. Okay, fatalism is something that we discuss a lot, right? And he says relative fatalism with what we need to experience, because our free will has the ability to change some of the aspects of our physical lives. But we are always responsible for our conduct. Free will, also relative. Remember, we have free will. We are developing free will as we evolve. We have very little free will in the beginning when we are only instinct. And as we grow morally and intellectually, we start to develop more and more free will. But it's also relative, because our free will always be depending on the circumstances we find ourselves in and those around us. But he says that we evolve interdependently in each realm, the physical realm and the spiritual realm, meaning we depend on each other. In the physical realm, we need our parents when we are children, we need doctors when we are sick, we need advice from the elders when we are young. In the spirit realm, we need instructors to help us and to guide us, those that really can provide it. So that can move us from staying home to get involved in doing the work and doing charity. And so a spirit that lacks the capabilities or the merit to do it by itself needs the endorsement of the more evolved spirit. And then Hilario asked specifically what is a diverted prayer. Before we go there, Hilario is also present in both books in the domains of mediumship and action and reaction. We studied the domains of mediumship for a mediumistic studies. We haven't studied action and reaction yet because it's a couple of books down the road, but Hilario will be present on those also. Okay. He has been a doctor in the physical realm. Clarencio answers that a diverted prayer is one where the direction of the luminous impulse has been diverted, thus reaching another target. You see how the word refracted can also apply there, right? Because light refracted changes the direction. You know, if you pass a light to a prism, it changes the direction, it changes the color, a white light. So it gets refracted. But a diverted, I still think is a better word here. The direction. So basically, and we are going to see this, she's praying, asking for the help of someone that cannot help her. So the prayer, because of the elevated level and the importance of the prayer doesn't go to the person she's praying and asking for help. It goes to a different person or team that is going to provide the assistance that she's asking for. Okay. Comments, questions here? Okay, let's continue.
We were eager to ask more questions, but our instructor calmed us down. Just wait a minute. You'll soon see that we are all connected to one another. Then he said to the young woman waiting respectfully, please call Sister Eulalia. A few moments later, Eulalia appeared, beaming with kindness and warmth. Sister, said Clarencio, this chart displays a heartfelt appeal from Evelina, whose return to the physical learning experience was approved by our organization. It looks like the poor woman is in dire straits. Yes, she really is, agreed Eulalia. Despite her frail new body, she has been enduring a great mental struggle. Her father, Amario, is burdened with inner issues and has put his health at risk. And her stepmother has been suffering obstinate persecution at the hands of our unfortunate Odelia. Evelina's mother? That's right. She hasn't yet accepted the fact that she is no longer the woman in Evelina's home. For 2 years now, I've used my energy and goodwill to deter her, but she's tangled up in the dark threads of jealousy and won't listen. Overflowing selfishness has made her forget about her commitments. Sumila, Amaro's second wife, has been severely depressed ever since little Julio's death. As you know, the boy drowned because of past moral depths. His stepmother, Zumila, went so far as to actually desire his death because she didn't love him. And now she feels guilty due to the influence of her husband's first wife, Odelia. Evelina, in turn, after losing her little brother under such tragic circumstances, is all out of sorts, caught between her grieving father and her despondent second mother. I saw her just yesterday. She was weeping, all distraught, in front of her discarded mother's picture, begging for protection. But since Odelia is entangled in the web of her own mental creations, she cannot respond favorably to Evelina's trust and tenderness. The girl has so vehemently asked for spiritual help that her petitions changed directions and have arrived here in this form. We were eyeing the little chart in silence. Breaking the long pause, the minister asked Hilario, do you understand now that what a diverted prayer is? Evelina calls out to her mother's spirit, who is in no position to listen to her. Even so, her petition isn't lost. Uttered at such high frequency, our little sister's pleas break through lower circles and go in search of unfailing support. Gazing at us with his lucid eyes, he concluded, "Would you like to help us out with this?" Of course we would. We were enthralled by the case. Our instructor recommended we wait for a few days, however. He himself wanted to find out more about all that had happened so that he can give us more accurate information when we were with him. Our trip was set, and when the time came, we were ready. At a short time later, Clarencio, Yulila, Hilario, and I were at the door of a modest yet comfortable residence in one of the districts of Rio de Janeiro. The street clock read 9 p.m. sharp. We went in a small room that looked like a study or library. A visible worried man of about 35 was reading a mechanic's manual. On his planned desk were various publications that he had been studying, more properly assuming the role of mentor for our group. Lorenzo explained, "This is Amario, the head of the family. He has complicated debts from the distant past. On several occasions, he made use of guns and knives to do evil. Today, he holds an important post at a railroad station." Then we went into a charming bedroom. A sweet 14-year-old girl was embroidering initials on a linen handkerchief. Looking thin and sad, her big, serene eyes showed that she was concentrating. She did not notice our presence, but when the minister's unseen hands touched her, she displayed indefinable inner joy. She instinctively looked away from the white linen cloth and gazed at a woman's picture hanging on the wall. She smiled in rapture as if she were conversing with the person in the picture. Lorenzo explained, "This is Evelina, whose incarnation we oversaw a few years ago. The picture is that of her discarnate mother. Evelina has been bound to her parents by the threads of deep love for many centuries. She has come to meet other persons and situations she needs in order to ascend spiritually, but she has also brought with her the task of assisting her parents. At the moment, she believes her mother is the one doing the assistance, but because of her spiritual merit, she is actually the one that is assisting her still struggling mother." I embraced the enraptured girl who was surrounded by a luminous aura of peace. For a few seconds, I meditated on the greatness of love and the sublimity of prayer.
Okay, thanks, Zoraida.
You're welcome.
So let's meet the family and the characters that will be present in this book throughout the history of the book, all right? So Evelina is the little girl that sent the diverted prayer. Eulalia is the spirit that received the diverted prayer, and it's that been helping and assisting, is the maybe the guardian angel of Evelina, maybe a familiar spirit, protecting spirit, but for sure a spirit that has deep connections with Evelina and is trying to help and assist her. But by herself, she cannot deal with it. She needs help, and that's why she asks Clarencio to help more evolved spirit. Evelina's father, Amaro, is a 35-year-old that works as a mechanic. The stepmother, Zulmira, is being obsessed by Odila, the mother, the one that she sent the prayer and asked for help. So let us go over the names again, because we're going to have to deal with them. Eulalia, the protecting spirit of Evelina, the girl. Amaro, the father. Odila, the mother. Zulmira, the stepmother. The father married again after Odila discarnated. Julio, the son that have died young, and we are going to see more details about his death. And actually, the book talks about Julio reincarnating in the same family. Spoiler alert. So the same child is going to reincarnate as little son for Zulmira and Amaro. And we are going to see his struggles in the spiritual world as a child in a children colony, which is very interesting. Of course, all related to his past. The boy drowned because of past moral debt. We only see the present picture of a young child who drowned in the beach, but nothing happens by chance. He had a lot of past moral debt that is related to him and to those around him, and but the stepmother, which is interesting, actually desiring him to die because we are going to see him. She thought that he was interfering, was in the middle of her relationship with Amaro, the father, and unconsciously or a little consciously, she wanted him to disappear. But now when he dies, she becomes extremely guilty, feeling guilty, and she attracts the obsession of the mother, the real mother of Julio, who is Odila, trying to cause all sorts of trouble to her because, according to Odila, she's responsible for her son's death and responsible for causing unhappiness in the family. She's not a good replacement for Odila. Odila is jealous of Zulmira. Okay. Now, the prayer is sent to Odila, but because Odila is entangled in her own mental creations, she cannot respond the prayer. She cannot even receive the prayer because her focus is somewhere else. But a prayer is never lost. So the prayer was so sincere and so vehemently asked that it changed direction and arrived directly to Nosso Lar, where Evelina left 15 years ago, and where she has her protecting spirit, Eulalia, receiving this plea. So Clarencio explains to Hilario that Evelina calls out her mother, spirit, who is in opposition to listen to her. But with such a high frequency, the prayer breaks through lower circles. Remember when we talk about where the prayers reach, and go in search of the higher levels of support. And then when they arrive at the place, it's in one of a modest residence in Rio de Janeiro. They arrive at 9 p.m. Normally, the spirits come to help at night because it makes it easier for them to help and assist when the incarnated beings are in a sleep state, because they can have the interactions and conversations. And then they describe what they find there. Amaro, a 35-year-old man that they say in past incarnations made use of guns and knives to do evil. So he has some atonements in this present life, and of course losing the wife and losing the son are atonements that he has to go through for reasons that relate to his past and his relationship. Of course, we are surrounded by spirits from our past. And then we meet Evelina, a sweet 14-year-old girl who is embroidering. The Clarencio touches her, and she doesn't notice the presence, but she feels a joy, because the presence of evolved spirits around us brings us a sense of joy, even if we cannot explain. And she looks at her mother's picture that is on the wall, and she thinks of her mother, and she of course thinks of the prayer, right? And then he describes that Evelina came, she's connected to her parents, by deep love for many centuries. But she came with the task of assisting her parents. Sometimes our children, instead of us coming here to help them, they come to help us. They are more evolved spirits than us, and they come to help and assist us. So Evelina comes to be of help to her parents, even the mother that discarnated. But of course, with being a young person and in a physical existence, and praying for her mother, she believes that her mother is the one that is going to assist her. But because Evelina has a spiritual merit, she's the one actually assisting the mother, the struggling mother. Okay, so Andre embraces the girl who is surrounded by a luminous aura of peace, meaning the more evolved spirits, they have an aura, a luminous aura around them that, of course, the spirits in the spiritual world can see. They possess this evolved characteristic. Okay, and this ends the second chapter. So, any comments or questions here?
Just wanted to say thank you for trying to clear up all the rereading it and clearing up the relationships. It's difficult through multiple lives. It gets complicated, so thank you.
Yeah, we will always try to bring back who is who exactly, because it's a lot of names, and I know that the names in Portuguese sometimes are difficult because it's not very common here, right? But we are going to always try to remind who is who in this story, because it's important. Again, these main names here. Julio is a very important name. Evelina, of course, the girl. Zumira, Amaro, and Nodila. Okay, Elmo?
Yes, this these two chapters, they deal a lot with the issues of free will, of fatalism, of free will versus fatalism, free will with fatalism, free will opposing fatalism. It becomes philosophically complicated. And luckily, the next few weeks that we have on our spiritual books studies now, next week will be free will. And soon after is fatalism, if not both are the same. So the next few Thursdays, I think it'll be very important in the issues of free will and fatalism. It's such a complex part of especially the philosophical aspect of the doctrine. And it'll be very helpful to study that and correlate with everything that you read here today.
Yeah. We just studied last Thursday freedom of thought and freedom of conscience, which also builds up to what we are going to discuss, which is free will and fatalism. So if you missed, it's there recorded. It's on. You go to our YouTube page. You see all the classes. Yesterday I presented the last book of the Spirit's book, Hopes and Consolations. I presented through the United States Spiritist Federation. It's also there. You can, if you missed, you can watch it. We are. I mentioned that yesterday was April 1st, 1858, was the opening of the Parisian Society for Spiritist Studies, the first Spiritist center that existed in the world that Kardec created. That is the basis for all our organizations that exist up to today. The rules and regulations are by the end of the Medium's book that we just finished and started again. So all those studies, you see how they connect. I almost said that very well, that we are studying this in the Spirit's book, and we come to these chapters that talk a lot about free will and fatalism and the interconnections that between those. Okay. Divaldo's lecture, for those that missed Divaldo's lecture at the UN, it's available now on YouTube. Of course, the lecture is in Portuguese, so I'm sorry for those that don't understand Portuguese, but it's an interesting lecture. It's worth watching for those that can understand. Still doesn't have subtitles. We're working on that. Next Sunday, which is the second Sunday of the month, we are going to study the Gospel according to Spiritism. Okay. Any final questions, comments? Okay, the title of the third chapter is Obsession, which is another very interesting subject that we are going to study in eventually in the Medium's book, and that we mention a lot in our studies. There is a book by Divaldo called Obsession that is unfortunately out of print, but for those that have it, it's a whole book that talks about the obsessive processes and the subjugation process, which is the most complicated case of obsession. Okay. Carol, you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarita, for reading. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for being together again as brothers and sisters for our study, our new book, the book which is Between Heaven and Earth. We have learned that thoughts are things, thoughts are physical energy, and we know that sincere prayers are useful and good. We will receive what we need in the appropriate timing. A prayer is never lost. A diverted prayer can reach the essential target, which is elevated according to the moral laws and the luminous light directed. We develop more and more free will as we evolve. We are all in need of assistance in the physical realm as well as from the spiritual world, because we have accrued debts and unresolved issues from past incarnations. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, for guiding us today, and may we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and also for our loved ones, our directors, our counselors, the mediums, and workers. We pray for inner peace and world peace, and especially for those now who are suffering in the physical world, also suffering spirits in the spiritual world. We pray for SGNY and all spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, expand, and always be protected. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of light, of love, of peace, and of service. So be it.
So be it.